Hello and welcome back to Bicycle Legs and another edition of Anniversary Albums. Today we're looking at albums that are having a significant anniversary in the month of December 2024. For those of you who are new to this series, when I say a significant anniversary, I'm talking about one that ends in a 5 or a 0. So 50th, 35th, 40th, that sort of thing. You'll get the hang of it as we go along. As usual, I've chosen 10 albums to have a look at today. Now, normally when I do these shows, I say, oh, I had to leave a bunch out and that sort of thing. But December's always a pretty quiet month for releases. So scraping up 10 was actually a bit more of a challenge this month. But I've managed to pick 10 and we'll have a look at them in chronological order as I always do. And we're going to start off with an album that is having its 60th anniversary in the month of December. It was originally released on the 4th of December 1964. It is the album Beatles for Sale, by the Beatles obviously. Now this is the cover that most of the world got. I've got the CD out for ease of showing. This is the cover we got here in Australia in 1964. It's terrible, isn't it? It's just a horrible cover. I hate it. Compared with the one that the UK and the rest of the world got, this is just not a good cover. This is, however, a very good Beatles album, and I think one of their most underrated albums. It's where they started, I think, expanding their songwriting, like getting into like just little hints of where they would go eventually with albums like Rubber Soul. When you've got, I mean, No Reply is a great song, should have been a single, I think, really good song. But then you get songs like I'm a Loser and Babies in Black, and I really feel like they're starting to point the way to the more sophisticated songwriting that you would get from the Beatles in just a year's time. You still get some wonderful covers on here like Rock and Roll Music. Mr. Moonlight's one that a lot of fans don't particularly like, but I like Mr. Moonlight. Kansas City is a great cover as well. But I Follow the Sun is a beautiful Lennon-McCartney song, mostly written by Paul. Absolutely love it to death. You get 8 Days a Week, which was definitely written to be a single, but didn't quite make it. Still really good. You get their incredible covers of Words of Love from Buddy Holly and Honey Don't from Carl Perkins. Every Little Thing, I think, is a great song, and it was the subject of an absolutely fabulous cover version by Yes. I Don't Want to Spoil the Party is really good. What You're Doing. The Lennon-McCartney songs might be the weaker one on the album, but I still like it. And then you get the wonderful cover of Carl Perkins' Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby to end off. Sung by George, and it's just absolutely wonderful. So yeah, it's a really good early Beatles album. I think it holds up really, really well. And I think the criticism that it gets is undeserved. The next album we're going to have a look at is having its 45th anniversary in the month of December. It was originally released on the 7th of December 1979, and that is Quiet Life by Japan. Bit of a transitional album, this one. I mean, their early couple of albums sort of falling a little bit into that new romantic kind of genre. Their later albums would definitely be more experimental, more art pop, that sort of thing. This one I feel like it falls somewhere in between, and you can sort of see where they've been, but also where they're going with this album. The title track Quiet Life is great. Fall in Love with Me, Despair in Vogue, Halloween, All Tomorrow's Parties cover version obviously. Alien and The Other Side of Life. It's a really, really good album. I think the next couple albums would be even better, but I like this album quite a lot. So if you're not sort of all that well exposed to Japan, maybe you've heard of Japan through Porcupine Tree because Richard Barbieri was in both bands. Check out Japan. They're a really good band. The next album we're going to have a look at is having its 50th anniversary in the month of December. It was originally released on the 9th of December 1974, and that is Dark Horse by George Harrison. Now, I've just recently done a studio albums ranked on George Harrison. I will leave a link to that in the description. This album wasn't in the top half of that ranking, but I still like this album quite a bit. I think it's got some good songs. The Hari's on Tour Express that opens it is really, really wonderful. I think Simply Shady's great. Ding Dong Ding Dong is a holiday classic for me, more of a New Year's song than a Christmas song, but I still really, really like it. I think Dark Horse is a beautiful song, but the problem with a lot of this album is that George's voice was a little bit shot. It would recover, but he was straining with his voice on a lot of this. Far East Man is great. It Is He, Jai Shri Krishna is great. Probably the only thing I don't really love on here is the cover of Bye Bye Love, but it's still a really good album. The next album we're going to have a look at is mostly a live album, and it was originally released, it's having its 20th anniversary in the month of December. It was originally released on the 10th of December 2004 as a digital-only release. It then, in 2005, got a physical release as a CD and DVD, and that is Venue Songs by They Might Be Giants. Now, the conceit of the main part of this album is that they did a tour and they decided to write a new song for each venue they played, which is just like an enormous undertaking because it was a pretty big tour. I think there are about 40 different venues they ended up writing songs for. And on the CD, you get live versions of pretty much all the venue songs. I think one or two might be missing, but plus you get studio versions of some of the best venue songs. It's an ambitious project and it's a lot of fun. They use the venue songs to sort of pastiche some styles of different bands like Kraftwerk or Yes or The Cars. So it's really interesting in that respect to hear them sort of pastiching different styles of different bands. But and then on the DVD you get video versions of the studio versions of the venue songs, and you also get a few other bonus tracks as well. So yeah, it's an absolutely wonderful release if you're a They Might Be Giants fan. Well worth tracking down if you can still get it. So yeah. Next album we're going to have a look at is having its 35th anniversary in the month of December. It was originally released on the 11th of December 1989, and that is Monty Python Sings. I love this album. I'm a big Monty Python fan, and they did a lot of songs throughout the shows and the movies and on their records, because they did a bunch of records as well with like not just stuff from the TV shows, but like new sketches that they would write just for these records, and often songs for these records as well. And this kind of collects a whole bunch of them, adds a few new ones, and yeah, this is a lot of fun, this album. I mean, you've got to always look on the bright side of life, which is wonderful. You got the Meaning of Life theme song. You know, you've got the Money song, Oliver Cromwell. That one always cracks me up. Not at least for the fact that it's one that John Cleese sings, and John Cleese just cannot sing to save his life. Finland is funny. Medical Love Song is great. Every Sperm is Sacred. Come on. It's like one of the highlights of Meaning of Life. You know, Sit on My Face is hilarious. Eric the Half a Bee. You know, Brian's song, the theme from Life of Brian, which, you know, one of the funniest movies of all time. Knights of the Round Table, which is from the Monty Python and the Holy Grail. You know, I've Got Two Legs is short but really, really funny. Christmas in Heaven again from the Meaning of Life, and you know, I use that on one of my Christmas CDs that I've made for family and friends. So yeah, just a lot of fun. And this is a 2019 reissue, which has got a bunch of bonus tracks on it as well, which is well worth getting if you can still get it. Great, great album. Next album we're going to have a look at is another live album, and it was originally released on the 12th of December 1969, so it's having its 55th anniversary in the month of December, and that is Live Peace in Toronto by the Plastic Ono Band. Now this was the Plastic Ono Band thrown together kind of at the last minute to do this gig. It was the Toronto Rock and Roll Revival. In 1969, a bunch of bands played, like really, really young Alice Cooper band played, very early Chicago played, bunch of like old 50s rock and rollers played as well. It was a big, big festival. So, yeah. And John Lennon got a band together with Alan White, who obviously would later play with Yes, Eric Clapton, Klaus Voormann, who was like a friend of theirs from Hamburg and was a bass player. He'd played in Manfred Mann. He played on a lot of solo albums by John, George and Ringo after the Beatles split up. And of course Yoko is there too. And I know a lot of people are gonna, you know, shit on the fact that Yoko was there and doing her thing. I don't care. I don't mind the Yoko stuff, so... But he starts off with, you know, some rock and roll 50s cover versions, Blue Suede Shoes, Money, Dizzy Miss Lizzie. Then he gets into some, you know, of his own stuff. Does a wonderful version of Yeah Blues. An interesting version of Cold Turkey, which actually isn't as harrowing as the original single. But it's still a really interesting version. Did I mention Eric Clapton's on this record as the guitar player? I don't know if I mentioned that. But yeah, Eric Clapton is the lead guitar player on this album. They do a great version of Give Peace a Chance. And then side 2 is Given Over to Yoko, where she does Don't Worry Kyoko, Mummy's Only Looking for Her Hand in the Snow, and John, John, Let's Hope for Peace. I like this album. It's a great time capsule of what happened in 1969. It was the first time John had played a concert to an audience since 1966 when the Beatles did their final tour. So if for no other reason, it's worth owning for that. And I think, you know, especially if you're not a Yoko fan, that's fine. I understand. But the stuff on side 1, well worth having, I think. The next album we're going to have a look at is the oldest album we're going to be looking at today. It is having its 65th anniversary in the month of December. It was originally released on the 14th of December 1959. It is the best known album by this artist by a long way. One of the best selling jazz albums of all time. And that is Time Out by the Dave Brubeck Quartet. Of course, anybody who knows any jazz knows Take 5. Written by Paul Desmond, the sax player in the quartet. And just a jazz standard, you know. The whole conceit of this album is that they're writing songs in non-standard, non-4/4 time signatures for the most part. I think the other song that people might know and is my personal favourite on the album is Blue Rondo a la Turk, which Keith Emerson from the Nice would cover as part of the Nice's repertoire. It's on their first album. but he converted it from a 9/8 time signature into a 4/4 time signature, which I think Dave Brubeck always found a little baffling. I think he was flattered by the cover, but also found the change to a 4/4 signature a little baffling. But you've got also the wonderful Strange Meadowlark, Three to Get Ready, Kathy's Waltz, Everybody's Jumping, Pickup Sticks. Just absolutely wonderful, cool jazz. This is not, you know, abrasive or anything like that. It's beautiful, smooth listening, but still with really great chops and really great improvisation, and should not be discounted for the fact that it is a smoother jazz. Absolutely wonderful album. I'm a huge Dave Brubeck fan, and so I always was going to have to include this album because I love it to death. The next album we're going to have a look at is having its 45th anniversary in the month of December. It was originally released on the 14th of December 1979, so 20 years to the day after Time Out. Probably could not be much more different album than Time Out though. It is an all-time classic though. I am talking, of course, about London Calling by The Clash. Double album, quite ambitious, not just because it's a double, but also musically they're trying different things. This is not just a pure punk album. You know, you're getting some dub on here and reggae and that sort of thing. They're definitely experimenting at this stage and expanding their sound. You've got the title track, which is just an all-time classic. You got Brand New Cadillac, Jimmy Jazz, Hateful, Rudy Can't Bail. Guns of Brixton is great. Lost in the Supermarket, Wrong and Boyo. You know, just great. And then it's not listed on the original track listing, but you get Train in Vain as like an extra song at the end. I think they recorded it just too late to actually include it in the original track listing. So, but that ended up being a big song for them as well, and I love that song a lot. A lot of people are going to say this is the Clash's best ever album, and that's very, very hard to disagree with, I think. But yeah, absolutely fabulous album. The next album we're going to have a look at is having its 45th anniversary also in the month of December. It was released on the 27th of December 1979, and that is Adventures in Utopia by Utopia. Now, this is the band that Todd Rundgren formed with Roger Powell, John Willie Wilcox and Kasim Sultan. And, you know, unlike a lot of Todd Rundgren's work, with his solo work, where he would often record most of the instruments himself and, you know, write everything and produce everything and all that sort of thing, by this stage Utopia were a much more democratic band. All four members were contributing to the songwriting, they were helping out with the producing. You know, it wasn't all Todd on lead vocals and that sort of thing. And this album is also like, Utopia started off very much as a progressive rock band, and then they kind of morphed into a new wave band or a pop rock band or whatever you want to call them. This album is catching them very much in that transition, and I think it's absolutely wonderful. You've got The Road to Utopia, you've got Set Me Free, which is great, Second Nature, Shot in the Dark, Caravan is wonderful. Last of the New Wave Riders, so they're tipping their hat there to New Wave music. You Make Me Crazy, The Very Last Time, Love Alone and Rock Love. It's a really, really solid album. I really like it quite a bit. I might have a slight preference for the proggier Utopia, but the New Wave Utopia definitely scratches my New Wave itch as well. So they're both really great versions of the band, and I definitely highly recommend pretty much anything that Utopia did. I think they're all pretty good albums. And then the last album we're going to have a look at, I don't have an exact date for. It was released in December of 1969, so it is having its 55th anniversary in the month of December. It is a bit of a first for this band in a couple of ways. It is also a live album, and I am talking about Concerto for Group and Orchestra by Deep Purple. Now it's a first in that, you know, they're using orchestra for the whole thing. It's a first that this is the first album with Ian Gillan on vocals and Roger Glover on bass. This is very much John Lord's baby, and it's very much, you know, progressive piece with the orchestra and all that sort of thing. There's not much point talking about individual tracks because they're just sort of movements of the concerto, as it were. But the piece as a whole, I think, works really, really well. It's also something they would never really do again. John Lord would do similar pieces to this, but he wouldn't do them as Deep Purple albums. He would do them as solo albums instead. Although, again, he would involve some of the members of Deep Purple in those things, you know, such as the Gemini Suite, for example, just to name one. But I really like this album. It's a bit of an outlier in the Deep Purple catalogue, but I kind of like it for that. So, yeah, there you have it. Those are my 10 anniversary albums for the month of December 2024. Please do let me know in the comments which of these you like, which of these maybe you don't care for so much. And please, please let me know which ones I missed, especially this month, because I did not have a big list for this one. So if you guys mentioned something that I didn't mention, chances are I wasn't aware that that album came out in December and had a significant anniversary. So please do let me know, because I'd love to check those albums out. Please do like, share and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. If you're new to the channel, please go and have a look at some of my other videos. I have everything playlisted, so if you want to look at some of my other anniversary album shows, I have a playlist for those. If you want to look at some of my studio albums ranked, like the George Harrison studio albums ranked, I have a playlist for those. And if you want to see my appearances on other people's channels, I also have a playlist for those. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at bicyclelegs on Instagram, Twitter, and a bunch of other places. I also have a dedicated bicyclelegs Facebook page. Links are all in the doobly-doo. Please do give those all a follow and join in the conversation. I'd really love to have you there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.